Alright, so this is going to be a review of the Gunnr 1x6 Odin LPVO. Gunnr is a relatively new company out on the market, and they offer budget-friendly, relatively inexpensive LPVO options. They make 1x6s, 1x8s, and I believe even 1x10s. Now, before I get into this review, I need to be full disclosure with you. Gunnr did send this out to me for free for the purposes of testing and review. Again, I have full transparency when it comes to these things, so that's something you should know about. With that, I did get their 1x6 along with their mount. I'll talk about their mount a little bit later. I opted for the 1x6 personally rather than the higher powered ones, simply because of my environment. I live in New Hampshire. I'm going to be using this in New Hampshire. So in New Hampshire, due to the topography, it's really hard to get ranges beyond 300 yards, if that even, because it's very hilly and very foresty. So I personally really didn't need anything more powerful than 1x6, particularly for the rifle I intend to put it on, which is just a 16-inch AR, which really is by no means necessarily a precision rifle build. I've had this for about a month now, and I have several range sessions on it, and I have probably close to 400 rounds through it at this point. And so far, I'm actually really liking it. I actually think it's a pretty damn good LPVO for the price point. For the 1x6, along with its mount, I believe it retails at $399 if I remember right, a little less if you don't get the mount with it. So in terms of LPVOs, it's fairly inexpensive and budget friendly. But although it's relatively inexpensive, I actually think it performs quite well. The glass is actually really clear on it, and if I remember right, although it's relatively inexpensive, it uses German glass, which, if that's true, that's actually quite impressive that they're able to use such a higher quality of glass for the price point that this comes at. But with the clarity I see through this glass, I would not doubt that they are using German glass. Out of those 400 rounds, I've had no issues with it losing zero. It does utilize zero stop turrets, which is fantastic. Not really as big of a deal for me for the purposes I'm using this, which is, again, it's a lower powered LPVO, and on top of that, it's just going on like a general purpose rifle, so not really like a precision rifle. But for the people who intend to put this on a more precision build, having zero stop turrets is actually rather important. The mount itself, the only thing that's really special about it is its name. It's named the Gungnir, which is kind of cool. Again, Odin is the name of the optic, and Gungnir, which in Norse mythology is Odin's eight-legged horse. So beyond its name being really cool, there's really nothing special about the mount, which isn't a dig on it. It works just fine. It's just there's really nothing special about it. The one thing I do like about it, though, is that it has all of the torque specs clearly marked on the mount itself, so there's no guessing or going through manuals or whatever trying to figure out what torque I need to torque each of the screws. Quite frankly, I wish more companies did that. So overall, I do really like the optic, particularly for a budget-friendly LPVO. Now, with that being said, it's not perfect. The biggest flaw with this optic is its illumination. It does have an illuminated reticle, but the problem is it doesn't get nearly as bright as it needs to be, particularly in bright daylight conditions. It has 6 different illumination settings. Quite frankly, the first 3 are basically useless. They don't really get bright enough even in low light conditions for you to really be able to see it. And 4, 5, and 6, if it's dark out or it's not very bright outside, you can see it, it's fine. However, in any bright sunny days, bright sunlight conditions, it doesn't get nearly bright enough for you to even really be able to recognize that the reticle is illuminated. Now, on the higher powers, it's not necessarily a big deal because the reticle is rather large, so even if it's not illuminated, it doesn't really matter. However, on the lower powers, particularly 1 power, that illumination is very important to have because the reticle is quite small. So you really need that illumination to help you be able to see that reticle, particularly on 1 power. So with the illumination on this not being at the power it needs to be, the particularly 1-power on this can be rather difficult to use, particularly on sunny days. So they need to have a few more setting options and brighter setting options to probably double the illumination power of this reticle to make it more usable in daylight conditions, on the lower powers that is. Now luckily I did tell them about this, and they've told me that they are in the process with their, I guess you could say, their next generation of this Odin LPVO. They do intend to make the illumination significantly brighter. So that's a good thing. It's something they already are intending to approve on. And then one other thing that some people might take issue with is that it is an MOA, not in mils. For my purposes, it doesn't really matter. However, for the more precision rifle guys out there and who intend to do a more precision build, most people have moved to mils rather than MOA. MOA is pretty old school and is kind of gone by the wayside for the most part. There are some people who still use it. However, mils has really become the standard. So for those people who are looking to mount this on more of a precision build, they are more than likely going to be looking for a mil scope rather than an MOA scope. For me, it's not really that big of a deal for what I intend to use this for. However, for those precision guys, it can be a rather big deal to them. So my suggestion to Gunnr would be either A, make it a mil scope standard, or have a mil scope version of it. Because there will be guys who will skip over this optic completely solely because it's an MOA and not in mils. So with that, that's pretty much all I have to say on this. I think it's actually a pretty good option for the price point it comes at. I think this would be a great option for you if you are someone who's maybe looking to try LPVOs, you don't know if you'd like them or not, and you don't want to go out and spend 5, 6, 7, maybe even more on an LPVO, and when it's something you might not actually end up liking. Or if you're just looking for a budget LPVO to put on another rifle or something, I think this is a pretty good option for that. I would, however, consider waiting until their next generation comes out for the better illumination. Because from what I heard from Gunnr, it sounds like that's going to be coming out relatively soon. So I might hold off on it until they come out with the next generation that has better illumination. Anyways, I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you did, please like and subscribe. I'm Tyler Austin from Gungnir Strategic. Thank you so much for watching.